I had been debating whether or not I was going to do a second blog because I wasn't entirely sure if it was something that I was interested in doing. And then this past week, Ann Coulter came and visited Canada. And, well, Ann Coulter makes me want to blog. Now, I don't have a problem with Ann Coulter speaking in Canada. I believe that choosing to close our ears and our minds to another person's ideas is tantamount to choosing to be ignorant. I also don't have a problem with her speaking at university campuses. I believe that as educational institutions, universities and colleges ought to be the very place that public debate and dialogue is not only fostered but promoted. Conversely, I don't have a problem with a campus community speaking out against things with which they are opposed to. Throughout history, a lot of good has resulted from when people rise up and protest things which they feel are wrong. What I do have a problem with, however, is when individuals who have extraordinary opportunities and platforms from which that they can make meaningful contributions to public discourse opt to use those platforms to spread falsehoods and to promote ignorance rather than discussion. Now, apparently, Ann Coulter was invited to Canada to present on the topic of free speech. But I think that any of the salient or cogent points that she had made in her speech seem to have become lost in this myriad of events that have occurred both during her visit to the University of Western Ontario, subsequently her scheduled presentation at the University of Ottawa, and a single email.
Letter that was sent to me by that provost at University of Ottawa informing me that I might be committing a hate speech crime before I'd even set foot in the country. And that was publicized to at least a half a dozen people.
As Ann Coulter said, the letter was leaked to a number of individuals, including select media outlets, and so it's available online for anybody who wants to read it. And I've read it many times now, and I fail to see any indication of any kind of threat or accusation in that letter. What I see is a university official and an educator who is providing advice to a visitor to their campus. So I think Dr. Oule's advice to Ann, that she make herself aware of, if she felt she needed to be, of the Canadian laws pertaining to freedom of expression and hate speech, was an attempt to prevent a foreseeable problem that could have occurred given his understanding of the controversy that she comes with, as well as his understanding of the culture of his campus and his student body. But she takes this as an accusation and a threat. By this logic, had Dr. Oule, advised her that she make herself aware of the fact that the speed limit on Canadian highways was 100 kilometers per hour rather than 55 miles per hour, and that exceeding these speeds could result in a fine under the Highway Traffic Act, she'd now be saying that he had threatened her with a speeding ticket. Of course, Ann Coulter has every right to ignore Dr. Oule's suggestion, but to argue that his email was a threat or an accusation, well, that's from what I can see, that's just foolishness, or that's pandering to her base. After her speech at the University of Western Ontario, Ms. Coulter participated in a question and answer period, during which she was asked two questions.
First of all, as a 17-year-old student of this university, Muslim, should I be converted to Christianity? Second of all, since I don't have a magic carpet, what other modes do you suggest?
So the student asks Ann these two questions. One, does she feel that the student needs to be converted to Christianity? And the second question being, what other forms of transportation might Ms. Coulter suggest the student take? And Ann begins to answer the first question with a rambling, history lesson of post-Second World War American hegemony, starting with the conversion to Christianity of Japan, and eventually starts talking about the Korean War. Now, I'm going to go on a tangent here. I think that Ms. Coulter's point was that converting a population to Christianity renders dangerous peoples or dangerous countries safe. But despite her assertion that quote, Christian missionaries poured into Japan. The country today is actually largely secular, with 60 to 70% of the population claiming no religion whatsoever, and approximately 2% or less self-identifying as Christian. So by this logic, Ms. Coulter should actually be suggesting that the solution to dangerous people or dangerous countries is not Christianity, but rather the abolishment of all religions and secularization. Reciting history, but ignoring the present to try and support your view is actually pretty weak-minded. Anyway, when the crowd starts to press Anne for an answer to the question, rather than this brief history lesson, she doesn't provide an answer to the first question, whether or not the student should be converted to Christianity, which is still lacking at this point, but rather she skips ahead to the second question and decides that she's going to provide an answer to what other forms of transportation the student should opt for. And at that point, she blurts out, "Take a camel!" Now, since she made that "take a camel" comment, Ms. Coulter has been claiming that this was a joke or satire. It's neither. That's just flippant. Now, since that particular exchange, Ms. Coulter has been claiming in the media
that incredibly deceptive clip, there was about 10 minutes between the question and what I said. I began to give this student, snippy as she was, a serious and somber answer.
So Ann Coulter is claiming that she provided a good 10-minute answer, but in fact, the video clearly shows that she provided 2 minutes of rambling nonsense and obscure quasi-answers to a simple question, and then claiming that that's not what she did when it's there for everybody to see what actually happened is just dumb. So more than any other comment, Ann Coulter's response to that question catapulted her visit to Canada to the forefront of the media. Upon reflection, I now think that Dr. Oule's letter to Ann Coulter and the advice that he provided her was a little bit too reserved. Had I written the letter, I would have provided additional information about the differences between Canada and the U.S. I specifically would point out how Canada has managed to legalize both same-sex marriages and a woman's right to choose, how we have enacted gun control legislation and abolished the death penalty, how nous avons deux langues officielles, and how in Canada multiculturalism is thought of as a mosaic. I would also educate Ms. Coulter about the fact that conservatism in Canada is not exactly the same as it is in the U.S., and that while we might have a conservative government at this moment, that the other four national political parties are best described as left, 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 and more left. Canada is not a country that is founded upon the precepts of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but rather peace, order, and good governance. And that disrupting that peace and orderliness is akin to poking a sleeping bear. So her reception at the University of Ottawa was predictable. This community was prepared to protest her presence on the campus and to make it well known that they disagreed with her views. And as the crowd outside the venue grew, the university security personnel, Ottawa police, and her own security people became concerned for the relative safety of the event. And in the end, her talk was canceled. On her blog, Ann Coulter has stated, quote, that it was a police-ordered cancellation of her speech. But according to the Ottawa police spokesperson, it wasn't they who decided to cancel her talk. And the University of Ottawa has also come out and said that it was not their personnel who decided to cancel the talk, but rather that it was the organizers. So while I don't have a problem with Ann Coulter speaking in Canada, I still have a problem. Because given that Ms. Coulter's behavior while she was here visiting in Canada was ignorant of the advice that was being provided by an educator and university official, it was flippant to a young citizen of this country, that it was disingenuous on a number of accounts, and that it was mindless and largely devoid of any kind of intellectual thought, as far as I can tell, I seem to think that Dr. Oule's email was prescient. So this whole tale just seems to remind me that when you invite the clown, you just need to be prepared to have the whole circus.